Can you introduce yourself and tell the camera what you were doing and what you were working on and how it is related to climate action?
Sure. So my name is Lusungu Kayani Stearns, and I'm a consultant working with the United Nations. I work specifically for an organization called the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, also known as UNECA for short. And my work is related to climate action in the sense that I work on the Sustainable Development Goals, which are specifically, well, have one specific goal um, aimed at combating climate action, but the climate is integrated in a whole number of goals. So I'll probably get more into that in your other questions. Secondly, I'm pursuing a PhD on understanding the role of the circular economy in African cities and looking specifically at waste management.
Why is this work important to you?
It's important because I'm advising cities and local governments, regional governments on how to how to report on how they are implementing the sustainable development goals. Now, I work directly with governments in Africa, with local governments in Africa, to ensure that they come up with a list of their priority SDGs that they want to tackle, addressing their specific challenges. And I help them figure out how best to prepare these reports, which they share with the UN system and with the wider global world. And this is important for me to be a part of. And unfortunately, a lot of these cities in Africa don't have all the infrastructure and laws in place to make sure that the environment is taken care of properly. So before all this, and we're expecting in the next 20 to 30 years, there will be more people living in cities in Africa than anywhere else. And so before this happens, it's really important to think about what can we do for the environment now? What sort of long-term planning can we do now to ensure that we have greener cities and more sustainable cities that can handle the population growth? Concretely, what steps can we make now and what plans can we put in place now to ensure that the waste that we're putting into the environment is not going to harm the environment? How can we think about using our waste in a more efficient and innovative way? So reusing our waste rather than trying to get new resources out of the environment.
Well, what gave you the idea to work on this?
Well, I think, since I was probably your age and traveling to Tanzania, where I'm originally from, and also living and working in East Africa and working throughout the continent, something that always is visible and striking is the amount of waste, of trash everywhere, because there isn't enough infrastructure to deal with the trash. The economies are changing in the region, and we're getting more and more plastics and materials within the waste stream. Wondering, how are we going to be able to manage all this new influx of waste? It's such a pressing problem now because of the way the population is growing so quickly and the way the economies are changing. I feel like it's a really pressing issue. It's sort of not been addressed in international development work. Things like waste management have sort of been put on the back burner. So for me, as working in international development for most of my career, I've seen that waste is something that just needs a lot more attention, especially right now as things are changing so quickly. And I just think with my voice, hopefully I can make a difference in elevating the issue of waste to policymakers on the continent and also to people working on the region from the outside.
What do you think we should do about this?
I think that's a good question. I think that everyone has a role. It's not just the big organizations and government who can do something. I think children are first and foremost probably the most important actors, and I think schools are really important for kind of introducing waste challenges from an early age so children can be active in their own households, in their own communities, and become stewards of the environment. I think we all should be stewards of the environment. So I'm sure you've heard of the 3 R's. The very first R around refusing, I'm not sure if you know what that means, but refusing means just even before you as a person, as a consumer, when you go to the store, can you refuse to purchase something that is wrapped in a material that's going to be really hard to dispose of? So what can you do in your own capacity as an individual, whether you're a child or an adult, that can be better, have a smaller footprint, right, on the environment? So what what everyone can do is just think about themselves and how they can make that impact, and then how they can also teach others, and I was saying schools are great because they introduce, and homes, families are great. They introduce children to these concepts, and children can also learn these things from school or from friends and teach their families. And then if every individual sort of is more conscious about the choices they're making, then I think we can have some changes. We can't wait for someone to tell us what to do. The change has to start within.
There are so many bad things happening in the world right now. What makes you hopeful?
I'm hopeful. One, because we're having this conversation. The fact that you are interested in climate action and thinking about some of these bad things in the world and these environmental challenges we're going through means that you will, I'm sure, make a huge impact as you grow up. And I think there's so many solutions coming specifically from young people that make me really hopeful. And I believe that the way we have developed, um, speaking from an environmental perspective, the way we've developed up until now economically has not been sustainable. But I think that the youth are doing things differently and demanding more. And so that gives me hope that we will at least respect our environment, respect our environment more in the coming years. So that gives me a lot of hope, is the youth. So Agenda 2030 is an agenda that was negotiated by a whole lot of people, a lot of national governments and nonprofit organizations called like NGOs, which are non-governmental organizations, community organizations, regular citizens, people like you and me, schools, a lot of kids were involved. They tried to make the process inclusive. Inclusive means involving as many people as possible from society. The agenda was based on, I'm trying to remember, people, planet, and there's another one. I guess I feel like prosperity, which usually means the economy. So thinking about the economic, the social, and the environmental areas that are important to everyone. And so Agenda 2030 is this massive document, but it's got three basic dimensions. So the economic, the social, and the political. Within this agenda they came up with a set of 17 goals. And these goals were agreed to be adopted by national governments throughout the world. And the plan was that, between 2015 and 2030, the governments are committed to addressing these SDGs, the 17 SDGs. They would work for 15 years on the targets and the established indicators within the goal. And if you're interested in any of the goals, I suggest you go look up the goal, like maybe goal 13 on climate action, and see what the specific targets are and the indicators. And you let me know if you think those are realistic or not. Some of the targets look at the air, like air quality. It's not opening for me. Okay, so goal 13 is take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. And I know that one of the targets is around, improving air quality. So they have some very ambitious indicators on what that means. Air quality is a really good one because it sort of looks at different dimensions, right? It looks at health. It covers other goals as well, like goal 3 is around health. It also looks like at goal 1 and 2, which are on poverty and food security, because they're all very interrelated. That's another thing about Agenda 2030 and the SDGs, is that they're all connected to one another. You can't just implement one goal and forget about the other goals. You have to think about, how is my action towards air quality, for instance, impacting several goals at once. So I definitely encourage you to check out goal 13 if that's the one that you're interested in. And maybe as we go, as I said before, change starts with how we lead our lives, and you can think about how your actions maybe can be related to each of the targets and indicators under goal 13. So you can localize the goal for your own life.